Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the East Riding of Yorkshire series. Together with the unparished city of Hull, it forms the county of the same name. There's 172 parishes here. Which one are we in today? Welcome back to the East Riding of Yorkshire, everybody. The sun is still shining. It's still very nice out here. Now, last week you saw Bielby, which was a very small place hidden away in the East Yorkshire countryside. Today I've got a place that's very similar. In fact, it's probably a little bit smaller. And this walk today begins at an old chapel. That's that building there, and it's also our end point because, like Bielby, this is another linear village, which means I've got to walk straight down and straight back again. This is Thornton. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Thornton is a tiny village in the East Riding of Yorkshire, situated approximately 4.5 miles southwest of the town of Pocklington and 5 miles northwest of Holme upon Spalding Moor. There are lots of villages called Thornton in England. Sometimes this one's been distinguished by the use of a suffix, so in records this can be called Thornton in Spalding Moor. Like Bielby, this one lies just to the north of the Pocklington Canal. Two of its three listed structures are Walbut Lock and Walbut Bridge, both on the canal. In the 1320s, Thornton suffered a large flood, caused by the neglect of the local drains. Floods occurred again in the 17th century. By 1797, records described Thornton as an entire sand and in most parts very light, referring of course to the local soil. Of course, farming is still as important here now as it's ever been. The modern village is mostly residential, clinging to both sides of a single village street, with the church towards the eastern end. Minor roads run towards other local villages. There's a fairly large food-based business here, a lovely old church, and some interesting buildings. There are no pubs, but historically there were two, named the Plough and the Grey Horse. Come with me for a short walk through this tiny East Yorkshire gem. Our route around Thornton begins with this old chapel. Seemingly Wesleyan, according to records, the chapel was built in 1909 and was still in use in 1974. However, a Wesleyan schoolroom, known to be being used for worship in 1851, predated this by over 100 years. Thornton occupies a relatively low-lying piece of land. Nowhere throughout the parish does the ground reach more than 50 feet above sea level, and large areas are below 25 feet. The village itself stands on the highest ground. Other than the bridge and the lock on the canal, St Michael's Church is the only other listed building in Thornton. All three structures are Grade 2 listed. This is largely built of rubble. No part of the building can be dated with any certainty to earlier than the 14th century. The church had 4 bells in 1552, but by 1770 only 2 remained. There are still 2, one from 1767 and the other undated. In 1552, the church had a silver chalice. The church in Bielby wasn't open, so let's see if we're in luck with Thornton. Here's the door. No, locked as well. It looks like Northern Power Grid have tried to get in as well, to no avail. So anyway, yeah, we can't get into this one either, unfortunately. So It's probably open by appointment, I would have thought, in a very small place like this. Although remember, this church is shared with Melbourne, so yeah, it probably opens up occasionally. On the gate as I left the churchyard there was a flyer advertising the local Harvest Festival, held this year on the 23rd of September. All funds raised, according to this, go towards the upkeep of the church, and so they should. On the gate post there was a plaque. This tells us about some daffodils and crocuses which were planted here in 2012 to commemorate the Diamond Jubilee of Queen Elizabeth II. This gate stands behind a huge tree. I guess this would pass as a village green for a place of this size. It's surrounded by benches and is effectively right in the centre of the village. Note the sandwich board, that's advertising our next landmark. Whilst Thornton has no shops, it does have a nursery, and by nursery I mean the horticultural version as opposed to ones populated by children. This is Triffitt Nurseries and they're Thornton's largest employer. They produce salad crops including lettuce, Chinese leaf and celery. So opposite the nurseries there's a bus stop. I'm a little bit surprised that buses run out here actually, considering how small this is. But here apparently you can catch the 195. One way you get to Pocklington and the other way you get to Allerthorpe. And next door to this bus shelter there's the parish notice board, and one of these is going on it. Thornton is done. Excellent. Running alongside the church is Church Road, and if you follow this, you'll come to Church Bridge. That'll test your collective memories. We saw that way back in the Melbourne episode, and the Pocklington Canal runs underneath it. This house is a former school. The building dates from 1927, at the time replacing an older school which once stood on the same site. In 1965 this closed, and ever since pupils have been sent to Melbourne Primary School. By 1974, the old school had been converted to a house. And houses are pretty much all that's left to see now, because beyond the old school, it's a smattering of properties on either side of the road before we reach a farm at the end. I am able, though, to mention another local business. Common End Farm is the base of Abacus Fireplaces and St Julian. Abacus Fireplaces was established 40 years ago, and St Julian was the name of their associated shop, located on Royal Parade in Harrogate. Okay, so we've pretty much reached the end of civilization. Thornton ends in like a bend just here, which turns right. Sutton-on-Derwent is 4.5 miles away, according to that sign over there. And save for a farm, which you can see above this hedge, there isn't really anything else in terms of civilization. It's pretty much the end here. So what I'm going to do now, just to show you how small this place is, I'm going to walk back to the car, which is literally only just gone out of my view over there, and keep the camera rolling as I do to show you that this place is tiny. Of course, beyond my car, like I said earlier, there are a few houses, few council houses, isolated buildings. So we'll start here at this sign. Pocklington's also 4.5 miles away the other way, by the way. Look at these nice flowers. Aren't they gorgeous? So let's walk. This will catch anything else I may not have caught walking down. I do know on the left here there's a house that's got some pretty flowers, so I will catch those. I always like to see flowers, no matter what time of year. I mean, obviously springtime is the best time to see flowers normally, or early summer, but even in early autumn like this is now, they can still look quite nice, even in the winter actually at times. So let's have a look. This is the house in question. There we go, look, another advert for the Harvest Festival on this wall, fence even, not wall. There you go, nice flowers there. And walk down this path, and I can actually see my car now again in the distance. I imagine this will probably take me about 5 minutes to walk, so if you can deal with me rambling for another 5 minutes, then more power to you, because I know not everybody would. There's some big houses here on the left. That one's quite impressive. They're obviously newer than most of the houses here in Thornton. Most of them are quite old. They look like they're late 19th century, early 20th. I would have thought. Again, it's something I would need Nikki for to confirm. But there is a nice mix actually of property. So that's Common End Farm that we're just going back past again. That's where the furniture business was. You might be able to see my car now under this tree. It's parked just outside the chapel, the old chapel where we started. So you can see this is a really small place. Not a lot going on. It's very quiet too. I mean, there's been the odd bit of traffic come past. It's not been completely dead. I imagine people use this as a bit of a cut through to get from place to place. It's certainly the kind of village that people just drive through though. They don't usually stop. So I think I'm one of an exclusive club. There's the church on the right again. And as I said earlier, down that road there will take you to Church Bridge and into Melbourne, which we saw in the Melbourne episode. There's the green and the bus stop and the parish notice board. And the nurseries on the left, Triffitt Nurseries. And you can definitely see my car now, can't you? Just up there on the left. Well, on the right actually, on the right of the road. So yeah, that's Thornton pretty much all in its entirety. There's not really much more to show you than that. And because of that, I'm actually going to add a little bit onto the end of this episode because it's so small. It's not going to get a picture bit. It's not even going to get a rest of section. But what it will get is Allerthorpe Common. Now Allerthorpe is a parish we've not done yet, but I'm planning on doing it later today. The problem is though, that Allerthorpe village is separate from Allerthorpe Common. There's no road that links the two together, and Allerthorpe Common is actually nearer to Thornton than it is to Allerthorpe. So in this episode we're going to cover Allerthorpe Common, and that's where we're going to end. Right on the boundary between Thornton and Allerthorpe you'll find Allerthorpe Common. You'll also find this, Thornton House Farm. This is a livery yard and riding school. As well as being a learning facility, it's also used for shows and training courses. So to Allerthorpe Common, which is a woodland and nature reserve. In 1965, a 12.5 hectare portion of the wood was designated as a site of special scientific interest because this lies upon one of the last tracts of semi-natural grassland in the Vale of York. Pollen counts have shown that the common has provided a habitat for heather, birch and pine for at least 2,000 years. During Anglo-Saxon times, some of the trees here were cleared for conversion of the land to pasture. The common became drier as drainage was improved in the surrounding farmland, and in the 1950s the land was bought by the Forestry Commission. Part was drained and planted in 1963 with Scots pine, Austrian pine and lodgepole pine. So obviously it made more sense to include this in the Thornton episode than it did in the Allerthorpe episode because it's so close and it's literally just over the border. There's no way, like I said, to walk between this and Allerthorpe village anyway, so this made a lump more sense. And I'm not going to walk around all of it. As reserves and woodland go, it's not the biggest one in the world, but even so, if I did walk around it, you'd just be seeing more of these fabulous trees, which after a while might get a little bit boring. There is a section where it seems to open out and there's more sort of clearings. There's some pylons that go across the reserve at one point. I know on Google Maps there's a guy who stood underneath one of those and took a shot looking upwards like this into the pylon, and it's quite hypnotic actually. If I can download that image, I'll put it in the video right now to show you what it looks like. But apart from that, it's mainly just all these wonderful pine trees. And not a lot else really, but it's a nice place to walk your dog. Absolutely, if you come out here with your dog, I'm pretty sure they will enjoy Allerthorpe Common. And speaking of Allerthorpe, that one's not going to be the next one. It'll be the one after the one I'm going to next, because the next one is literally just like a mile or so up the road in that direction. And I'll see you there next week. This has been the parish of Thornton, and I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.